What are you saying, people? It's another episode of The Panel.
We're here. We're back.
Hey, Rob, listen. The last episode.
Amazing.
Jeez.
Gems.
And you know what? It's needed, you know.
Informative.
It was so needed. You know, but we're doing a part 2
We
with
never
that.
stop learning, you know.
Yeah.
Do you know
Doing a
what I
part
mean?
2 with it, you know. But you've been all right, though?
I'm Gucci. Yeah, that means I'm good, by the way.
You're good?
Sorry, yeah, I'm all good.
I thought that was another posh
I'm
word,
amazing.
isn't it? You're amazing.
Nah, I'm all right. You know.
Nah, but listen.
One is feeling very happy today, and yes.
Weather's getting better as well.
What? Pardon me?
No, it's getting better.
It's freezing, bro.
No, but I'm saying the sun's coming out,
It's
innit?
cutting.
Bro, the sun's coming out, though.
No, talk to him after, yeah.
Yeah. But listen, guys.
freezing.
Listen. All we're going to say is thank you so much again. You know, you're liking and subscribing and sharing. And we keep saying the Patreon.
Please join the Patreon.
Please join the Patreon for exclusive content. You're seeing myself and Rob in different light. Rob's actually got something coming out called The Day in the Life of Mr. Dyer, because this man's always busy.
Yeah, I know.
So listen, I can't wait for that content. And also, guys, just to say, the content that I did with the chief social worker of children, young people and families is out there. It's already out. Yeah. So have a look of the work I'm going to be doing with Isabella Trowler.
Yeah.
You know, and it's for CPD, for students, universities, professionals. Use the Patreon.
Very important what Nana's saying. So literally from next month, right, to all university students, there will be CPD, and this will really help your courses and get the right information from me and Nana. Multi-agency, social work. The combination is
health,
mad.
everybody,
crazy,
And if you want to come on as a guest,
look, he's only saying health because you're here.
That's true as well. That's true as well. Yeah. So now sorry about that. But if you want to come on the podcast, you know, whether it's the social worker and the mentor or the panel, you know, the email, thesocialworkerandmentor at gmail.com.
That's right.
Right. So people, just to say, see this episode here, I'm very, very
the
proud.
The energy is amazing.
Energy is amazing, but
it's amazing.
This is our first set of health colleagues, as in health.
I can't believe that.
Coming onto podcast, and it's quite bad actually.
Yeah,
because we work with health,
and it's an important part.
It's an important part, and health should have been here earlier.
100%.
So that's apologies on our part, but our health colleagues, thank you so much for coming. Please introduce yourself. Start with you.
My name is Aisha. I'm one of the Safeguarding Children's Advisors. I'm based in a community trust, and I supervise health visitors, school nurses, therapists, and I occasionally sit on MASH Health.
Fantastic.
Amazing.
My name's Detriece Francis. I am a newly qualified health visitor. I am a children's nurse by background, specifically in HDU, and I also work within the community alongside health visitors and also safeguarding practitioners as well.
Brilliant.
Amazing. Round of applause.
Round of applause.
Absolutely amazing. Yeah.
Now, there's so much that we both want to ask you, but I guess just to say, starting from the very, very beginning, the day in the life of a health professional, what's it like?
It really varies. I think our roles are different. Yeah. As a safeguarding advisor, I can come in and things can be pretty quiet and it's okay. And I'm like catching up on stuff, and I sit on different panels, like I sit on Marak and stuff like that, and I can catch up on those bits. But then, sorry, I know him. But then there's sometimes that you will come in and it is crazy busy. You've got like a health visitor that's really concerned. She's just visited a family. She's wanting to escalate concerns to you. She wants a plan. You might have a school nurse come up to you and be like, I'm really worried about this family. We're not working well with social care. Can you help? Can you step in? So it just varies. And those are like the things that people never see.
Yeah.
When you think about health, you don't think that there's people that get so involved in safeguarding. I don't think the public really know how involved we are
and how
when it comes to
important
the child protection process.
To decision making. You are.
So we have, like, as a health visitor, there's mandated contact. So see mum between 10 to 14 days for baby, 6 to 8 weeks, 9 to 12 months, 2 to 2.5. So that's like your mandated contact that each child will get regardless. If your child has additional needs, sometimes it might be speech and language, it might be a weight review, it might be mom's maternal mental health, it might be that domestic abuse has occurred, it might be a listening visit, because sometimes, depending on the family, some are childcare leavers, some have gone through the care system and need additional support. So it does vary. We do have our mandated contacts, but you'll know that each parent has some parents want a lot of help and some parents don't want no contact at all. So it's just about kind of picking and choosing how you approach each one, but knowing it's different. I just find that I like to be organized, but you get away with everything. So if you like variety, it's kind of good for you. And I think it also just helps you to keep building and supporting your families. And they're on your caseload until they're 1 year old. So you have that good continuation of relationship with that family and with that child. So yeah.
Okay. Do you know, I've got so much to ask you guys, you know. All right, so all right, so let's talk pre-COVID and now. Okay, yeah. So I'm sure we're all aware that since COVID, there's been a rise in mental health. There's been more and more complex cases.
More referrals.
Knife crime is on the rise, you know, gang relations. In terms of safeguarding and, you know, being a nurse as well, how is that, have you been able to handle these situations? And I suppose before COVID and now, what have you seen in terms of the differences?
I think pre-COVID mental health issues were there. Do you want me to bring it
you
up?
bring it to you.
Pre-COVID, we know mental health issues were there. Post-COVID, we saw that it got worse, both for young people, for their parents, adults, but we've also seen a slowing down in finances that have been placed into those services. So waiting lists are going up, they're getting higher and higher and higher. People are having to wait and almost put like a band-aid over their situation to cope and to manage with day-to-day life.
What are the current waiting lists at present? What's the waiting list?
Depends what you're waiting for, and it's really complex. So like when it comes to mental health, CAMS, it depends what you're coming there, in there with. It can be over a year, it can be up to 18 months, especially for things like autism. Those additional needs.
And there's so many different pathways in terms of stage 1, stage 2, you get triaged and then you need to be able to be assessed. So even between that, it can be like 18 months each time. And you can only even start that referral, I think, when the child is 2 years, 6 months. So parents that are experiencing at 1 year old, they're under the paediatricians, but there's not much that can be done. So you have to then wait, and parents are struggling. So while they're doing that, there's not much that can be done, which is so unfortunate.
I want to ask you both, recently, the Prime Minister spoke about NHS England being abolished. What is the impact on your services with NHS England being abolished? Will it impact in terms of caseloads? Will it impact in terms of, well, redundancies? Obviously, that's a given. But what will the impact be on yourselves in terms of your work within what you both are doing at the moment?
I think it's going to be a situation of wait and see, because at the moment we're experiencing significant financial cuts in the NHS, and it's coming from NHS England. We've been asked to cut budgets.
Right.
We can't afford. But you have to realise, when it comes to health and child protection, the waters get really muddy.
I can imagine.
Because we're not always paid for by NHS England. We're commissioned by the local authority. They pay for us. So actually, it's a bit of a grey area. I'm not sure if it's going to impact us, or if it is, or if it isn't going to impact us.
I do think it will impact, simply because the local authorities, some are actually bankrupt. So with that being noted, actually,
she's not lying, people. She's not lying. She's not lying.
You know, it's
she's
like there's no money. There's no money. So if they're bankrupt and they need to actually cut where they can, children and families are the ones that are suffering. And so from that, children are like the heart of our country. You know, if we can actually feed in, actually pour into them, the country benefits. So the moment you cut that, the staff, the complexities of mental health, all these different things, we don't have enough of us to be able to feed and be able to actually pour into the people that need the help and additional needs. So I do think that we're feeling it already. So I don't necessarily feel like it's going to get better. I do believe it's going to get worse. And I think it's just pouring more onto people to save money so that they can, I don't know.
Yeah.
Is
there no in-house sort of like internal meetings about this, like
Yeah, there's no
staffing,
money.
cuts?
Yeah, there's no money.
there is meetings. They have. I have my meetings.
I don't know
like
how
once.
many meetings I've been to
Yeah,
that are
and
like,
we
we
don't
have no money. And that's not just one department.
Yeah.
That
Yeah.
is the whole, that there is little money
Yeah.
that we're working with. We all knew we was going to end up paying for furlough somehow.
Yeah.
And I think this is how we're seeing it in our public
Right,
sector.
okay, yeah.
And you
And
will see
these-
from the cuts from the staff that they have, you'll say that we're having a reshuffle. That word shuffle is a way of just saying we're going to half it.
Basically, yeah.
And
it's just trying to caress us, isn't
Yeah.
it? Basically,
Yeah,
basically,
but-
no, listen, we're cutting things.
Yeah, and
yeah.
that's it. So you'll see that constantly, but the workload doesn't change. If
Yeah.
anything, it becomes more.
It increases.
And yeah, and then there's still less people to actually manage it. So
What's your caseload like?
Yeah, I was going to ask that question, yeah.
yours is probably a lot bigger than mine.
My caseload is okay. My caseload is manageable, but you have to realise mine is not mandated. So as a safeguarding advisor, I'm just kind of there. I can't really, I mean, I give supervision, I book that in,
Yeah.
and that's regularly given to staff. And then I meet staff on an ad hoc basis when they need it. So my caseload is fine. But those that I supervise, their caseloads are significantly high, because what I'll usually do if I go into a supervision session, I'll look on their caseload and I'll say, right, who do you want to discuss? And you see the lists and lists of children is high.
I mean, as a newly qualified, they say that we're site building up to 30, which is fine.
Children.
Yeah. It sounds like a lot. If they're all,
No, that's a lot.
If they're
It's a lot, it's a lot, it's a lot.
universal, if they're universal, it's probably amazing.
Yeah.
But then if you have like 3 families where there's domestic abuse, and then you have another family where there's parental mental health, then it does get complex. I have colleagues that have had, 50 to 60, which is like crazy. And you do, like you said, like your supervision, it's about, what are you doing for this family? Are you actually doing anything? Sometimes as health visitors, we do sometimes, and it's not great practice. You keep people on your caseload because they just want a listening ear.
Yeah.
But you actually have to be doing something for that family that also impacts the child for them to be on the caseload.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's hard to say, well, there's nothing being done and that child's fine. So,
And when you were talking about your caseload, that's a combination of child protection, child abuse, lots of children, isn't it?
Yeah,
Across the
absolutely.
spectrum,
Yeah,
isn't it?
anybody that's above universal. So
Right.
universally is children that are fine, weight's fine, everything's okay. Anything universal plus or universal partnership plus.
Okay.
Let me just explain. Partnership plus being child protection, universal plus child in need,
Okay,
a child
yeah.
with additional needs. So anyone that
CWD,
has
children with disabilities,
anyone that has
yeah.
additional practitioners involved in their life.
Yeah. So can I ask, as a new qualified,
Yeah.
because for social workers we have the ASYE program.
Yeah.
What's the equivalent?
So we have the Skiffin program, which is like, it's a year's course. It's a secondment. I think most of them do that with a trust and with a university. You do placement, you do your studies all together, similar to like nursing. And then you have a preceptorship year, which is where I am at. So you have an assessor that kind of monitors you. You have your safeguarding supervisor, which is a bit like your role. So they kind of go things through with you, but you work autonomously. You do have your caseload, you build, and you basically attend your child protections. You do everything, but you do it with a little bit of support, but basically independently at this point.
Yeah.
All right. So well-being, mental health. Yeah. So as you're in the well-being, mental health business, how are you managing staff, or how are you managing with your well-being? Because a lot of these cases must be mentally and emotionally very draining, also very demanding as well. So how are you managing your own personal mental health and well-being dealing with these cases? Because let's keep it real, caseloads are getting higher and higher. These cases are getting more complex by the day.
More times required.
Yeah.
Definitely.
I work with a lot of youth offenders, a lot of boys who are on the verge of going to prison, got behaviour issues, whether or not. But more importantly, I deal with a lot of black African minority boys that are very much undiagnosed with, they may have autism, but they don't pass the EHCP plan or the criteria, or they may have Asperger's or ADHD or just a low learning ability. Yeah. So how are you both dealing with these sort of concerns and issues surrounding that?
I think there's 2 aspects to that. Definitely since I started taking on this role, I watch Love Island. You have to. You can't go home and watch anything dark. I mean, sometimes I sit on the child death panel. I sit in MASH. I sit in Marak. Sometimes you might just see all of it in 1 week. I need to go home and watch nonsense. Personally, that's how I look after myself. You just switch off. But in terms of like what you just said about young black children, especially undiagnosed autism, the autism rates are they're high, the waiting lists are so long, but you're also getting the aspect of parents not agreeing that their child has that.
Right.
Because taboo in our own
it's
community.
It's a taboo. We're still seeing that.
Right.
We're still having...
Quick question, I do apologize for cutting it. Is it more culturally?
Yes.
I think so.
Right.
Yeah.
I'm just thinking about my community of where I work.
Yeah,
absolutely. I think sometimes the lack of exposure to things, the preconceived ideas of what something is and what that means in terms of a taboo subject. Everybody wants their child to be really smart and, kind of be successful. But we also have to remember that even when it comes to things like autism, like you do have high functioning, you do have... So when you don't know things, you will probably watch, TV and headlines and kind of just go forth with that. But it's just about kind of navigating parents through that so that they can understand that there are ways to support your children. Actually, many children can go far with these particular additional needs. It's an additional need, not something to hold them back. But sometimes based on other people's experiences, parents will then say, well, so-and-so experienced this and they didn't get support and will obviously budget. So sometimes they don't really have a great outlook.
What I wanted to ask you both as well, just obviously jump off the back of that, just what you were saying. I want to talk about working together because a lot of the times being a social worker, one of the things that I've regularly heard from health colleagues, whether it's lack health visitors, school nurses, is that when it comes to that literacy, health are often left out. Is that, would you say, common frustrations that you have with children's social care? You can jump on me. I'm a social worker, so it's fine. But
honestly,
this is about, because like here, education, social work, health. But I just want to hear from.
But actually, sorry, before you start, actually, I do believe they're very much connected to the school because they have to be connected to the school anyway.
Yeah.
School nurses are.
School nurses are.
Yeah, that's right.
But do you feel that that working together, that guidance for health, you're left out?
Constantly.
Yeah.
And it's so unsafe. And it's, I constantly, I mean, on a daily basis, hear from staff, can you please escalate this case? Because I've emailed this social worker umpteen times. I've included their manager. I'm not getting anything back. And they're not comfortable. And for us, for health, we see social care as the lead child protection person.
The lead professional.
So we're going to. So if we've done a report, we're going to with that report. If we've seen something that's a concern, we're going straight to you. And when we don't get a response, it's so frustrating. We just get overwhelmed. Yeah, we just get overwhelmed. But
Look at education, sit over there, bro. Because you have to do that. I hear it.
No shade, yeah.
I hear it.
I will say, since I've taken on this role and since I've started working in MASH, I get it.
Right.
I get what social workers are dealing with.
Yeah, because you're part of the screening.
Because I'm part of the screening and I'm working with you guys and we're sat there together and we're in like 4 strats together.
But what are you getting in terms of if there's lack of information being provided in terms of the well-being and the health of the child or the scenario, what are you getting? Because if that's not being spoken about or being passed on to, that's a critical part of.
It's just unsafe, and I don't understand why we're not moving past it.
Yeah, because it's a common theme in your safe.
Common.
Right.
In serious case reviews,
it's common information sharing.
It's always information sharing.
Yeah, we spoke on that.
But I do think everybody is. Even though I am health, I do think that everybody does have a responsibility, and sometimes, as health, we lack sometimes.
Of course.
But I think because, like you said, social workers are considered the lead practitioner, the lead professional.
Right,
okay. It's as though a lot of the responsibility is on them.
Yeah.
But at the same time, especially like if you have a family whereby something's happened to a 7-year-old, but because there's a 2-year-old in the home, we don't have as much to contribute to the 7-year-old. However, because they're in the home, the lived experience, there's certain things that you have to align yourself with. And I do think because of that, that's probably why we're left out.
I think
because
so.
it's as though I'm not a school nurse, I'm health visiting, so it's about the 7-year-old, and therefore the alignment is
But
different.
you shouldn't be left out.
No,
though.
but you shouldn't be. But doesn't that come under safeguarding as well?
Yeah.
I was
It's working together to safeguard children.
I was actually going to say it's only like where I work. We had a serious case. We had a serious incident. We identified learning, and part of the learning that we identified is that we should have joint supervision within health. So if I identify health visitors working with a family, it's complex. All right, there's speech and language there. There's a physiotherapist there. There's a school nurse there. I'm going to hold a joint supervision.
That's right.
So that everyone in health, we're all singing from the same hymn sheet. We're all working the same. We're not crossing over with our work, and we're all able to go to social workers as 4 health individuals and say what is going on, what we're doing, how we're working.
That's right, under one uniform.
Yeah, so that we're under one uniform. Not every trust works like that. Not every borough works like that.
Yeah.
I will carry that back to mine.
Please do. Please take it.
Are you guys? Do you attend strategy or MAPA meetings?
I have.
Yeah,
I have.
They should be
do,
there.
yeah.
I know they should be.
They
but
should be there, but we have to.
But
if
it
we have a
seems
strategy meeting and a health visit involved, health visitors should get the invite.
I know, but
Safeguard should get invited. That's standard.
and you're absolutely right.
but it doesn't always happen.
Yeah,
But I attend a lot of meetings. No, I've attended 100 strategy meetings.
it's true, and health are not always
And
there.
I don't see no health person in those
It's true,
strategy
you know.
meetings.
Sometimes they don't know. Sometimes, like we said, information sharing. Sometimes the invite is not always there, and it's not an excuse. But obviously, we all know that like caseloads and last minute, and if I've got an ICPT and then I've got this, and then you have to pick what you're going to do.
demands.
Yeah, which is unfortunate. But I agree with you. Like it should be attended because you have something to contribute that's going to make a difference to a decision that's made. So,
But do you know one thing I'm going to say? And I know you guys are not going to be happy with what I'm going to say. Yeah, a lot of the times when I go to strategy meetings, when we ask health for, if we're saying, for example, this case should be Section 47 or ICPC, sometimes health sit on the fence and be like, I don't know, or I will go with what our professionals are saying. I don't know what is the reason why. I'm not saying it's all health, but something is very, very clear cut. Okay, right, this should be a Section 17.
Now they're giving you the look, you know.
No. I know where you're coming from. I know where you're coming from.
But why is that though? Sometimes
it's a lack of confidence, and it's intimidating. When you go to, when I first look back at when I first went to a strategy meeting, you think of like, oh my God, it's a social worker. Like they know what they're doing. Oh my God, the police are here. It can be really overwhelming. It can be like almost like a hierarchical thing. So if you have like a health visitor or a school nurse who is new, they're not going to have confidence to be like 100% Section 47. I didn't have that when I first started. Now I'm like, if this doesn't go to ICPC, I'm escalating it. You better make sure that this goes. You know, like now I have the confidence to really say my opinion. But it will vary. But it's all about teaching and training, but you need to have the time and the resources to do that. You need to be able to equip staff with the confidence to do that. But you need time and resource.
Go on.
I agree with that. I do think that sometimes you have to use your professional curiosity and you have to really trust your gut. Like I think a lot of the time, the ifing and the ahhing, you're just not digging a lot deeper than you need to. This is something I've learned. I spent part of my full term too with a strengthening families, which is basically band 7s who they deal with a lot of your child protection, and they specify with those particular types of families from antenatal continuously. And that's where I got a lot of, okay, this is how I'm professionally curious. This is how I ask questions. This is how I dig. This is how I use my observation. And it's not just what I'm hearing. This is what I'm seeing. It's what I'm experiencing. And then going above and beyond that. And I do think those forms of digging help you to then make those decisions. And sometimes you can't make a decision because you probably haven't necessarily dug as much, or the environment hasn't allowed you to do so.
And I also wanted to go on.
I was going to say, I actually think as well, we don't do enough practically joint work. I think some of the best cases that I've worked is when I've gone and done a joint home visit with a social worker.
Oh my gosh, absolutely.
That has been some of the best outcomes because you have time to see that social worker as a person. You get to know them, but also you get to see how they're working with that family, what their job is, what their role is, and they get to see yours.
And I was going to say that because myself and Rob, like I don't work for the local authority, Rob works, but I was there for a very, very long time. And one thing about me and him, particularly like health visitors and school nurses, they knew who we were. So if there was something that was going on, like we even speak to them on a personal level, and we might go and say to them, okay, right, you know this case, what did you think? What did you think? But it's those relationships, getting to know a health visitor, getting to know a social worker, doing that joint home visit, because actually you're seeing things from two different lenses. It's not just a social worker's lens, but the health visitor might have something different, whereby a social worker, I might be blindsided to, but you might actually be like, Nana, did you consider this on a home visit? Rob, did you consider this? That's very important.
I want to ask you guys a question. So there's a rise in vaping with a lot of young people now, vaping. And it's mad, because sometimes I'm driving by or I'm going to meet my young person and I see them in a shop and I'm seeing some of these news agents selling them vapes, I'm thinking, right, what are you man doing? I think I'm bad them up, right, yeah? But as we know, there's an increase, all these young people, they're on the bus in the morning, they're vaping, and you're just thinking, right, but you're 13, 14, vaping, which is smoking, isn't it, to a degree, right, yeah? So in terms of things like vaping, weed, lean, do you get many cases? And in terms of health and well-being, what is your advice to our audience
and young
maybe
people,
social workers
parents,
or young people and practitioners who are dealing with these sort of scenarios?
I think when it comes to separate it, vaping, you're part of the experiment. We don't really know what the long-term effects are. It's not been around for long enough. So you can't really say. We have seen some effects. We have seen people being hospitalized over it, but we won't know what people who vape look like in 20, 30 years until 20 to 30 years time.
True.
So if you know that you're happy to be part of the experiment, then that's something to consider. But when you're talking about young people and experimenting and alcohol misuse and drugs and things like that, it's so broad. Like, we all experimented when we were young. Is that what they're doing? Is this a normal behavior? Do they know how to do it safely? Has it been discussed with them how to do it safely? Or are they doing it because this is a learned behavior? This is a coping mechanism? It's two separate things. And I think if there's no mental health needs, if there's no emotional health needs, and this young person is just experimenting, is separate to someone who has emotional health needs, or they're very vulnerable and they're being led.
Go on, Dave.
I would say that in terms of from like a parent's perspective, I think the teenage brain is a very different brain from what a child's brain is, and it goes through different changes. And I think sometimes parents, it would be good, I always suggest them to go and use the solid whole approach, which I think is really, really good. It helps you to understand children and also teenagers, the way their brain develops, the way they think, their emotions, how they consider certain things, sometimes the changes that happen and when they do, which is actually free. It's online, so parents can go and do different things, because sometimes our children will act out in different ways based on their hormones, based on their brain development, and there is a science behind certain things. However, there is also environment, and the way that like you said about parental mental health is a really big thing in terms of what parents are going through, their adverse childhood experiences. These all contribute to certain behaviors, and also when they're not done safely, and just supervision. There's so much. It's like it's very complex, but I would say, listen to your children, create a safe space for them to be able to express themselves. Sometimes culturally it's difficult because we're used to a certain type of way, but we have to break out of certain norms from back in the day, because now that we're exposed to so much more, we have so much more information, we are able to navigate a little bit better. And I think actually young people would appreciate having a voice. We may not always agree with what they do, but just having that safe way to do it.
Do you know what though as well? I do apologise. So I go into a lot of alternative provisions. Well, they used to be called PRUs, Now these are, as you know, these are schools where these are young people with challenging behaviour, ASD, emotional behaviour disorders, compulsive behaviour disorders, defiance disorders, and a lot of them are undiagnosed. A lot of them do have autism. A lot of them have ADHD. A lot of them are also on medication as well. There's an increase. And once again, it's a lot of our African minority, so black African minority group of boys and girls.
Majority,
And the majority, it is mostly boys as well. What's your views about this? Because for me, it's very, very concerning, And as I said before, I'm going to keep it real with you guys. I see it's serious behaviour. It's bad behaviour. They don't listen. No, they don't listen. You think they're listening, but they don't listen. They don't want to listen. Their attitude stinks. Yeah. Home life, yes, might not be great, but they have serious behavior issues where don't tell me anything.
Yeah.
Like, what'd you say to me? I'm not listening to you. Why should I listen to you?
Yeah.
For me, that's a concern. And there's a trend of, and there's an obsession of defiance and not wanting to listen. To be rebellious, that's the new thing right now. That's the new trend.
I think it's multifactorial with these cases. Firstly, it's not one size fits all. It's so specific to that young person. What is their background? What is coming from home? What is their home perspective? These children often need with those complex behaviour needs, they need a complete wraparound service. They need health to be onto it, regular check-ins and reviews with their health needs, regular reviews of their emotional health needs, education. They need an education style that suits them specifically. They need a safe person. Home life, their parents need to be equipped to understand and to know how to deal with this, how to manage it, how to risk assess these children. It has to be a complete wraparound service for these young people, but we don't have the resources for it. It's so complex, we just don't have it available. But a lot of parents are fighting for their children. A lot of parents are fighting the corner for their children.
I feel like you said, it is multifactorial, but I do think that we don't have enough resources regarding trauma. I feel like there is a lot of families that experience a layer of different trauma and trauma upon trauma, and they've seen things, they've heard things that we couldn't even imagine. And I do think, especially when their brain, especially with a child, especially within the 1001 days, like that child's brain development is crucial. So if they're in a home of domestic abuse and various other things,
misuse,
it's going to impact them. And then when there's no work done and there's an expectation that a child must operate in a certain, environment, and this is the standard, we're kind of setting them up to fail. And then there's no support for parents, and then you add poverty and you add in just parenting because it's difficult. It's as though like they're going to fail, not because they want to, but because they're drowning, and then there's no community within the UK right now because everybody's trying to survive on their own. It's like before we had a village, now every man for themselves, and then you've got one or two people that in the the front line working that are trying to be okay, let's come together, let's do this, but there's only so many of us, and then we get burnt out. It's a vicious cycle.
I've got a big question to ask you both. I think it might be my final question I want to ask you both. So recently the Child Safeguarding Panel Review released a paper on race, racism and safeguarding in children. And they were looking at how kind of like racism and racial discrimination has impacted on, children who are black, mixed, Asian and from global majority. Now, from a health perspective, because I'm very, very vocal about it in terms of children's social care, what have you both seen from a health perspective in terms of the racial inequality that exists within your sector, decisions that are made or not made for black children, Asian children, children who are mixed from global? What is it you've seen?
In the referral forms.
In the referral forms. Or what have you seen in practice? Big question, but it's very important because I know for many, like sometimes I've seen on the news how many, women who are black have spoken about how, experience racism from within the NHS and nurses. What have you both seen from your perspective? Wide question, I know.
It's a wide question. It's there. I have seen practitioners in supervision holding clear bias against family. And I don't even think they realise. I don't even think they're aware that they're holding a bias. They might look at a family and say, for example, oh, dad is 20 years older than mum. Dad is 20 years older than mum. But actually, culturally, within that culture,
it's normal.
That's quite normal. It doesn't necessarily mean immediately coercive and controlling relationship. He's older, and that's what I see sometimes is that there's that automatic like honing in on cultural specific things, and it's they don't realize they're doing it. It's a bias. They don't actually I can't see a malicious intent with it, but I can see there's just that
there's a bias that's there.
the bias is there. It's there.
I'll be honest, when I was a student, I wasn't exposed to certain communities. So in terms of like you're saying about the way in which they may come together, or in terms of age or their actual behavior, through my mentors, they're more experienced. Actually, this is this particular community and this is how they do things. This is how they operate. So it's about being open-minded and not coming in with an expectation and a judgment. I do think that I have seen it where certain families are considered, well, why would they do this? And, you know, that child is definitely A, B, C, D, and E. And actually, it's also about speaking up and being like, actually, culturally, this is something that's done. It's not considered this. And also, when you take time to get to know your families, you'll be able to suss out what clearly requires child protection and what doesn't. But you have to put in the time so that the decisions you're making actually take away from the bias that may be subconscious, and it's taking a look at yourself and reflecting, which I think sometimes we don't have time to do, but it's important, because that way you can be like, okay, this is something I need to look at myself and take that away, because you're making decisions about real children that impact them in the future.
Do you know?
Sorry, just ask my final question. So my final question. So just to piggyback off what you were saying, and Aisha, what you were saying as well, is there an overrepresentation of a certain cohort of, say, maybe black children or Asian children or mixed children who are referred to you, or is it just is very, very diverse? Because I know, like, me and Rob have spoken, like, in the care system, there's so much black children and Asian children who are mixed in the care system. Is that an equivalent within your service, or is it just very, very diverse?
I wouldn't say it's very diverse. But I think it also depends on the area that you're in, that you're based in. Because if you're based in a predominantly highly deprived area, you're going to see a specific type of person there. So you do it, but it's there, but it's just different. And I was having this conversation earlier with my husband, and I was saying I think that it may be the way parents articulate themselves, because I've seen cases where you're working with a rich affluent family. There's severe domestic violence, there's severe safeguarding concerns, but I know we have not treated that family the same way that we have treated an ethnic minority family, and I don't know if that family were just able to articulate themselves in a way and show to social care,
we're okay, we're all right,
and to colleagues, we have insight, we know, I know the impact that this has.
That's a fantastic point you've made.
But then other cultures, maybe because English is not their first language, they're not able to articulate properly, and then they're treated differently. But the safety is the same.
So you've got issue regarding, you've got social-economic factors, you've got the racial factors, you've got financial factors, and issues of class, all embodied into one.
All of it.
Absolutely.
Very fair point.
I'm going to ask this.
I was just going to say, to piggyback off what you're saying, I'm really big on health literacy. I think a lot of the time families don't necessarily understand, just because of lack of exposure, of what things mean and how to have continuation of care, especially when you have children that have medical needs. So parents are emotional because it's their children, and then it's perceived in a negative way. And actually they're not able to continue care, so you might have them repeatedly coming to A&E, and that looks like it's an accident and child protection, or rather than actually they just need support.
I understand.
And especially with the communities that I work with, a lot of them do want the support, but like you said, articulation sometimes can be a struggle, and then sometimes frustration, which everybody has, but because they have additional needs, it comes across like it's a bigger problem,
and it's heightened when it shouldn't be.
Absolutely.
Go on, Rob, sorry, man.
So I want to ask you both this, because it was also very much a learning period and curve for me as well, right? So, and this is based on culture and community as well. So there are specific cultures and communities where two parents, but they might be related, so they might be cousins, whatever, whatnot. And then very often they might have, I don't know, 2 or 3 children. So 2 or 3 of the children, two might have autism, and then one might have a disability. As I said before, once again, due to cultural reasons, they're actually cousins or maybe half brothers, whatever, whatnot. Now, of course, obviously, we've all got to be respectful surrounding people's religions and cultures and communities and where they're from, whatever, whatnot. But at the same time, I suppose for you guys as well, you know, when you read a referral and, you know, you read that the parents may be related due to that culturally or religious, how are you handling that? You know, because as I said before, it is quite common for a lot of cultures and religious
communities,
communities where a child's going to have some form of disability or not all the time, but it's very high. How are you handling that? Because as I said before, for me, it's very important that culturally, you know, that I suppose we all understand and how to go about it, because obviously, you know, we're not here to judge. I mean, you know, when I worked with particular cultures and communities, I wasn't there to judge, you know, because I'm working with a young person, but that young person's got autism or he's got certain health issues. But I know as a professional, it's due to, you may be related. If you understand where I'm coming from.
I get what you're
coming from. And I think it's about just treating them the same as you would any other family. I mean, it's really no different to, you know, someone who has children with someone who has a genetic condition. And they know that more than likely their child's going to end up with some form of a disability or an additional need. They take that risk. So it's about just treating them the same, ensuring that the education is there, and just breaking down those barriers. Because sometimes you think, it's quite different because they're like, oh, cousin, you know, and people hold up their own prejudice. But it's about just having a really blanket approach to it, that these families are actually no different to families with other genetic,
the same level of equity
factors. Exactly.
Absolutely. I just feel like keeping the child at the center. I think a lot of the time, there's going to be many things that are going to shock us, things that we've not seen before. But when you keep the child at the centre, making sure, like you said, they have the right level of education, they've got the support, they also understand about their disability as they get older, and parents are aware of the treatment that may come from outside and to protect that child so that that child doesn't feel, you know, bullying, harassment. There's a lot of things that can take place because people are not very nice sometimes. But that child is a blessing. They didn't ask to come into the world, and so therefore they need to receive, you know, pure kindness and politeness from those around. So I just think in terms of the service, anything they ask for, but I also am honest with my parents. That is something I will say, you know, if that's the route that they've chosen to go for cultural reasons or for their community, that's fine. But these are the implications, just so that they are aware. You should always be transparent with parents. It's hard because you don't want to offend, but it's just to say, this is fine, but this is what can take place.
I like what you said.
You know?
My final question before we wrap.
No problem at all.
Any advice for anybody who wants to become a health visitor or school nurse or safeguarding advisor? What advice would you give to our audience or any student who's studying? Any advice for them?
Work with everybody that you can. You know, treat every placement, treat every job as a networking opportunity. It's such a small world. Just get yourself, especially when you're a student, you have the opportunity to go and say, do you know what, I'm going to work with this person, I'm going to go and sit on this panel and observe, and I'm going to go and do that. Just get your fingers into all the pies, because you can do so much once you get that, you know, that skiff and qualification. You can go you can just do so much. The world's your oyster, and the more you learn, the more you take on, the more opportunities that you'll have.
I would say be open to learning all the time. I would always say every opportunity is an opportunity to make a difference. A conversation you have with a family, with a colleague, you don't know what will come of that. So always treat it as though that's your last contact with that family. And don't leave anything on the table. Because that could change their life, make a difference. And if you are impactful, they will never forget you, however old or however they move around in this world. And I think it's a blessing and it's a privilege and an honor to be able to work with families. It's not like a right. When you go into someone's home and to be able to make a difference, or for them just to hear you, that's something that many people don't have. So when you do have that, treat it special and give your all, because you actually can really look after these children. So I
just want to ask, so safeguarding, Can you tell the audience, because safeguarding is just rising and rising and rising and rising, and I mean, look, we all know there are. We could probably name 20 safeguarding scenarios right now. So can you give the audience and the fellow practitioners just a briefing about what is safeguarding and what are some of the safeguarding concerns that they may come across, and how do they report a safeguarding concern to a health officer? Yeah, because I do think that's quite important. Yeah.
So safeguarding is so broad,
Yeah.
and sometimes it's such a grey area. But when it comes to safeguarding, be nosy, ask questions, ask more questions, and don't ever be afraid to contact your supervisor. Don't ever be afraid, if there's no one else, to contact the MASH hotline and just ask. You never have to give any details. You can just tell them the scenario. Don't be scared. Don't be worried. And they will give you an honest opinion, even from their perspective, where this could go with screening.
Yeah.
So, you know, safeguarding is everybody's business. If there's anything that twinges your ears, go with that, ask more questions. You may be wrong, you may be right, but always follow through with it and ask more questions.
Excellent.
Okay.
I would say with safeguarding, I think what I have learned is that your gut is so important. Your professional curiosity, I used to struggle with that, because it's the difficult conversations. Those are the things you need to have. And what looks fine, don't just trust that it's fine. A lot of the time, the thing that looks a bit crazy, sometimes that's not the thing you should be really worried about. It's the pretty picture. And I think sometimes we've been conditioned to think if something looks a certain way, we can put that aside. We don't have to worry. But in terms of safeguarding, I think even with my mandated contacts, that's always on the brain. Not just because that's not my title. It's still important to incorporate that. And to be honest with parents, you know, parents, I think that's the most important thing. Yeah, because they need to know that if this were to happen, this is what you will do, because their child is important and you're an advocate.
And they'll respect you more as well.
Absolutely.
If you go in there and you're honest and you know, they know from you exactly what you're going to do, whether they don't like it or not, at least they know.
You've told them.
I mean, to be honest, I had a parent and I just said, look, they had some previous issues before. I said, look, I'm very honest with you. I need you to be honest with me. If you've made a mistake, if something's happened, we can work through it. I can't help what I don't know. You know? And I'm there to provide help. I think sometimes they think social workers can take all your kids and this is all there's so much more that we do. And we're not just one-dimensional people. And so,
Amazing.
Well, listen, guys, I just want to say to our health colleagues,
our
very, very first health colleagues, thank you so much for coming on today and being part of the panel. And I think it's brilliant to hear from our health colleagues' perspective to the work, caseloads, complexity. So really love that you've come here. Obviously, I agree with what you said. It's taking too long. Next time, it should be a lot more quicker. So thank you both.
Also, as well, it just shows you the necessity of awareness and working together. Because, as I said before, like, we can't do without you. You can't do without us.
Exactly.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, we can't.
You know,
we can't.
But no, thank you so much.
Thank you so
Appreciate
much.
it, man.
Thank you.
And guys, you know where to find myself.
Like, subscribe, Patreon.
Patreon. If you want to be a guest, thesocialworkerandmentor@gmail.com. Thank you, guys, and we'll see you soon.
Peace.